Everybody, welcome back to the channel. Liam Douglas here, coming at you from Roxborough, North Carolina. And in today's video, I'm going to be demonstrating daytime long exposure using neutral density filters. But before we get into that, please remember to check out the Liam Photography podcast. You can find it anywhere that you find podcasts. You can subscribe to the show. I have a massive back catalog of episodes that you can go back and listen to at your leisure. And also make sure you subscribe to this channel, comment on this video, like it, share it out on social media, and hit the little bell icon so you'll be notified when new content drops. All right, so let's get into daytime long exposure photography using a neutral density filter. Now you may be wondering, why would I want to do daytime long exposure photography? Well, because it can allow you to get some really cool effects in your photographs. Now I'm out here at Mayo Lake today, which I frequently go to because it's not far from my home and it's a nice public area. And I'm going to be doing a little daytime long exposure down at the lake in a little bit here in this video. But one of the reasons, or some of the reasons why you'd want to use a neutral density filter and do daytime long exposure photography is, number one, it can make a body of water look as smooth as glass, no matter if the wind's blowing and the water's choppy. By using a long exposure during the daytime, you can make the water look as smooth as a sheet of ice or glass. Now, it will also allow you to make the clouds in the sky look smooth like cotton candy. If they're moving on a windy day like today, you can get that kind of effect in the clouds. And the third main reason why you might want to do daytime long exposure is if you're at a waterfall. So if you do a daytime long exposure of a waterfall, the water as it's coming down the waterfall will look silky smooth like cotton candy once again. It won't look anything like water, and it's a really cool effect, and I'll have some samples in this video that you can check out for yourself. Now, I don't have a waterfall handy here, so I can't do a waterfall shot for you, but I do have some that I made when I was in Georgia that I'll include in this video so you can check out the really cool effect that you can get doing daytime long exposure at a waterfall. So let me go into what we're going to be using today. So I've got my mirrorless mover bag here, the 30i that I did a previous review on as the best camera bag for compact travel. And we have our neutral density filter. You're going to need a shutter release. You'll need a tripod, which mine's in my truck, and I'll grab that when I get to that portion of the video. Now, in my case, I'm going to be using some step-up rings. If you've been following my podcast, you know I've talked about these a few times. They're extremely handy. And then I have my X Pro 3, and I have the X Pro 3 coupled today with the XF 16-80 f4 lens. Now, the reason why I have the step-up rings, let me explain to you here. I always recommend that when you buy filters for your camera, always buy them bigger than you need. So go through all of your lenses, see what the largest filter diameter is on your biggest lens, whether it's a 72 or a 77 or an 82 or a 95, whatever the case may be, and buy that size filters or maybe even a little bit larger. Now, I usually recommend you go with either 95 or 110, 112 millimeter. It's going to be a really big filter, but the advantage of that is if you get a filter that big, now the one I'm using today is an 82 millimeter. I do have ones that are bigger, but this is good enough for today. And then I have a set of step-up rings. Now what the step-up rings allow you to do, and these are inexpensive on Amazon, you can get a good set of them for like 10, 20 bucks. Is you get a bunch of metal rings inside here that you can attach to your ND filter, and you can step it down from 82 millimeters to whatever the millimeter size is of the front element of the lens you want to use. Now in my case today, the 16-80 is a 72 millimeter front filter thread, and my filter is 82 millimeters, so I've got to step it down by 10 millimeters in order for the ND filter to fit on the front of this particular lens. But that's not a problem with a good quality set of step-up rings. That's why I always recommend buy your filter larger than you need, and then use step-up rings. That way you can use one set of filters for every lens in your camera bag instead of buying multiple sets of filters of various sizes. Now, ND filters come in different types. This one here is a variable ND filter made by K&F Concepts. It was a 2-pack. It had 2 filters. One was a variable that went from 2 to 32, and then this one goes from 32 to 512. Now the numbers have to do with how much light the filter can filter out, which you're going to need to do if you're doing daytime long exposure on a beautiful sunny day like today, because if not, your photos are going to be washed out, totally overblown, and you're not going to get anything but white, because the sunlight's going to overpower any long exposure photography that you do on a day like today. So that's what this is for. Now, they also make fixed ND filters where they don't adjust variably to different darkness levels. And you can get those. They do come, and ND filters can be purchased in round, like I have here, or you can get them in square or rectangle. And then you get a special mount system that goes on the front of your lens, and then the plates slide down into that holder, and that gives you your ND filter that way. You can also have gradient ND filters, where the bottom half of the filter is almost completely transparent glass and the upper half is darkened. You use something like that for when you want to affect the look of the sky. You want to darken the sky more, but not affect the lower part of your frame. Again, on a day like today. All right, so we're going to go down to the lake shore here, and I'm going to demonstrate to you how we use the ND filter system on the camera and what we can get when we're using it and we do a daytime long exposure. Okay, now I apologize because it's a little bit windy today, and there's also people here that are boating and fishing and having a good time, stuff like that. But here we have my setup. You can see I have my X Pro 3 on the tripod, and I have the neutral density filter on the front here. And if you look closely, you'll see I've got the step-up ring on here to make it go from 82 millimeters 72, so that it fits the front element of this lens. Now I've got the lens adjusted to 80 millimeters, as you can see there, because I know I'm going to be standing back a ways from the water. And the reason why I am is I don't want to be on the wooden piers, because they shift. They move up and down, and you don't want any kind of movement like that. That's the other reason why we have a cable release here to do our long exposure, is because you don't want to introduce any movement in the camera by pressing the physical shutter button. So we use a cable release or a wireless release system so that we don't have to touch the camera, and we can work the shutter without introducing movement into the shot and ending up with a blurry shot that's terrible looking. All right, so I've got the ND filter on here. Now I've got it adjusted to its maximum extreme light stopping power, and that is so that we can get a longer exposure and get the kind of look we want. Now I have the aperture of the lens set to f8, and I have the ISO. I don't know if you can see that in the window on the dial there, but I've got that set at 160, because you want to use your lowest ISO possible, because you don't want to introduce additional light into your shot. You're trying to remove or restrict as much light as possible. So that's why we use a low ISO. So I'm going to go ahead and get set up here, and let's go ahead and get some shots and see what we can make happen. Now I'm going to try probably a 10-second exposure first, and then we'll go longer from there if we need to. All right, so we did a 10-second exposure there, and we're just waiting for the camera to finish processing the image and save it to the memory card, and then we'll be all set there. And I'll show them to you later on when I'm back at the house on my computer, so that you can better see them for yourself. I'm going to move just a little bit closer on the concrete here, get a little bit closer to the water. Not much, just a little bit. And that's just so I can make it a little bit easier to get this shot. Now let me go ahead, and I'm a little bit off kilter here, so let me adjust. There we go. Try to get the shot a little more level, and there we have it. So now this time I'm going to try to do a longer exposure. Let's see here. And let's see what we got here. Let's adjust our focus. Okay, let's make sure our focus is good. It says our focus is good. All right, so this time we'll try a 20-second exposure. And this here is the scene that we're shooting, is out there off the end of the pier there. And we're at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. All right, so then we're going to release. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is in order to do long exposure photography, you're going to need longer than normal shutter time. So your camera should have a B on the dial that stands for bulb mode on your shutter speed dial. So you want to set it to bulb mode. I did forget to mention that at the beginning. I apologize. But yeah, once you set it on bulb mode, then your exposure is however long you hold the cable release shutter button down. So we got a 20-second one. Now let me just double check my focus, make sure everything's good. And now we'll try a 30-second exposure. And again, I'm not moving the camera the whole time. I'm shooting the same scene over and over again, just at longer durations of exposure. So we'll see what the results are when we get back to the house and look at these on the computer. And you'll be able to see the difference in how the water appears. Now, as you can see today, the water is pretty choppy because there is a strong wind blowing today, but we're going to be able to remedy that by doing a long exposure. So there's our 30-second exposure. And so we pretty much got a 10, a 20, and a 30, and we'll go back and look at these on the computer at the house, as well as I'll show you some of my waterfall shots that I've done before doing long exposure photography. Okay, so here we have the sample images that we did today. This one here is at 10 seconds, and you can see it took some of the choppiness out of the water. And then this one here, the water is a little bit smoother still some choppiness. And that was at 20 seconds. This one's at 30 seconds, and you can see most, not all, but most of the choppiness is gone. Now, if I had done a longer shutter time, if I'd have done maybe 60 seconds, the water would more than likely be completely smooth. But it gives you an idea of what can be accomplished when you use a neutral density filter and do a long daytime long exposure. Now here's one at the bottom of, or at the midsection of Amicalola Falls in Dawsonville, Georgia. And you can see how the water looks like cotton candy. It doesn't even look like actual water. So this is the midsection of the falls. This one here is the top of the falls. And then this one here is at the very bottom of the same waterfall. So all three of these are of the Amicalola Falls in Dawsonville, Georgia area. So you can see that you can get some really cool effects by using an ND filter and doing long exposure daytime photography. So hopefully that'll give you a better idea of what you can accomplish with an ND filter during the daytime, and it might encourage you, hopefully, to go out and give this a try for yourself. Okay, so now that you've seen me demonstrate how you use an ND filter to do daytime long exposure at a body of water, and you've seen my sample images, hopefully it gives you a better idea of just what you can do with a neutral density filter, a good quality one, and using a long shutter speed, a long shutter time to get the effects that you want. Now, one thing I didn't mention in the opening of this video that I should have, make sure you buy a good quality set of ND filters like these K&F Concept ones, or there's another brand called ICE, ICE, or you could get Case, which is K-A-S-E, and there's also a guy named Michael the Maven that has his own set of filters that he sells as well. You want a good quality set of filters because you don't want cheap filters, as cheap filters are going to introduce color cast into your final images, and they're going to look like garbage. Now, I'm not saying you got to buy the most expensive filters on the market. This K&F Concept set is on Amazon. I think it was $200 for both of them as a kit. So I know it's not cheap, but it's not terribly expensive. Trust me, ND filters can get a lot more expensive. I have a Case Wolverine set at home that's $800. I kid you not. So just make sure you don't buy some cheap ND filters, especially not when you're talking variable ND, or you're going to get funky color cast in your images and they're going to look like garbage. All right. That's going to wrap up this video. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video once again. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment on it, share it out on social media, hit the little bell icon so you can be notified when the next video drops, and I will see you next time.